Lucky Loughran, the patron saint of all things cute and fluffy, testified earlier this week for season 2, and during his testimony, he says Chip Proctor never contacted him, at least not until August of 2023.
Did Michael Proctor ever call you or contact you at all in those 2 weeks?
No.
Hello, and welcome back, roommates, to Alexasrewm, where we are not lawyers, we are not medical professionals, and we are not law enforcement. We are just people who have opinions about all things going on in the true crime community, including...
When was the first time you were approached by anybody connected within this investigation on either side, if you recall?
About 2 weeks.
Who was it that approached you at that time?
First name is Paul, and he described himself as a private investigator for the defense team.
Yes, folks, the private investigator for Team Karen Reed was the first person to ever interview Lucky Loughran, which is pretty interesting considering there were obviously snowplows going out and about that night, right? So you would think that one of the first, what if any, phone calls that a lead investigator might make outside of the immediate circle of eyewitnesses who were there that evening would be at some point to track down to see if there was anybody who was potentially plowing the roads, since this was the night of a blizzard.
Prior to hearing from the defense private investigator, had you ever heard from anybody from any police department whatsoever?
No.
So not Canton Police, not the Massachusetts State Police.
Do you know who Michael Proctor is?
I do.
Objection.
I'll allow that.
And did Michael Proctor ever call you or contact you at all in those 2 weeks?
No.
And this seems to be a pretty common theme when it comes to investigations that are led by Chip Proctor. Remember Ricky D'Antano and Heather Maxson?
I'm asking you if during the course of your investigation you learned that Ricky D'Antano and Heather Maxson had a perspective. They were eyewitnesses to certain things.
Yes.
Relative to the SUV, right?
Yes.
So in case you are new to the case or need a quick refresher, Ricky D'Antano was essentially the DD for Ryan Nagel and Heather Maxson. Heather Maxson is the ex-girlfriend of Ryan Nagel. Ryan Nagel, I believe, is cousins with the Alberts, and they were picking up Julie Nagel, his sister, from the Albert residence that night, and they happened to pull up 234 Fairview pretty much at the same exact time that Karen Reed and John O'Keefe also arrived at 34 Fairview.
Do you remember in general communicating with Michael Proctor about interviewing Ricky D'Antano and Heather Maxson?
I do not know. I'm sorry.
Would that have been something that you would have found important relatively early on in the investigation? These are eyewitnesses. Let's get them interviewed.
Yes, it is important to interview anyone that's an eyewitness. Sometimes it takes longer because... Are you listening? I'm sorry.
I mean, like, today, Junior, like, but these particular eyewitnesses, even forgetting just Heather Maxson for a second, Ricky D'Antano, who was the sober driver, the guy who's operating the vehicle that happens to pull up at the same time, give or take, as Karen Reed, who's allegedly operating the motor vehicle, the unaliving weapon in all of this. Don't you think that's important? In fact, he's probably one of the most important people to speak to, because according to the Commonwealth's ever-evolving timeline, he would have witnessed this alleged collision. His car probably would have even gotten smashed in, considering now it's stretched from, how many, 62 feet to 84 feet? He would have been in the path of destruction.
So while we want to interview every eyewitness, sometimes an important fact is already detailed and witnessed by another witness. So in this situation, we had already interviewed one of the occupants, the one that was driving, the one that had the observed the events taking place, and we asked him if we were going to talk to the other two, would they have the same recollection, observations? Did they leave the vehicle to go in the house at all? Anything like that? Anything different? So that's...
Okay, so it would be important, obviously, to interview witnesses in a timely manner.
In some instances, yes, yes.
Do you remember when Trooper Proctor actually interviewed Ricky D'Antano and, I'm sorry, when Michael Proctor interviewed Ricky D'Antano and Heather Maxson?
I do not have a memory of that, no. I'm sure a report would indicate when.
Your memory. Am I understanding this correctly? Like, am I losing my marbles here? Because is he insinuating that Ryan Nagel was the driver? Or am I just like totally cuckoo bananas? Because it sounded like he insinuated that Ryan Nagel was the one driving, but I believe it was Ricky D'Antano because it was his truck that, and he was the one who only had the 2 beers. So, okay.
Take a look at that. I thought that was a report from somebody else. It's a report from you, actually. Tell me if that refreshes your recollection as to when Ricky D'Antano was actually interviewed.
Yes, this report, authored by me, was states that on Saturday, September 2nd, he was interviewed.
What's the year, sir?
What year?
2023.
Oh, so we got another 2023 date. Okay, got it. So 2023, Ricky D'Antano is interviewed. A little less than a month after they interviewed Lucky Loughran. Okay, got it. So now I want to jump back to Lucky Loughran's testimony and what his timeline had told him.
As you were passing 34 Fairview, could you see the area of the flagpole at 2:45 in the morning, sir?
Yes.
What was on the ground on the Alberts lawn at that point in the area of the flagpole?
Nothing.
Did you see a 6'1", 216-pound man lying on that lawn?
No.
Nothing. No. Why are we still here? Why are we still here? And I love Lucky because he's just very matter of fact. I did not see a body. I do not have any false memories.
That second time now that you're coming back, about how long is it after the first time?
About 45 minutes.
Oh, David, I believe you mean house long.
What time that you're coming for the second time to this area?
3:30.
At about 3:30 in the morning, how far could you see in front of you, again, straight and diagonally in front of you,
As far as my eyes would let me see.
as a result of the lighting on your truck?
Correct.
Now, you take the right onto Fairview. Describe for the jury what you see in the road at that point.
As I make my right onto Fairview, I notice that there's a vehicle on the right-hand side, roughly in the area of the flagpole, in front of 34 Fairview.
Okay. And did you make note of what type of vehicle that was?
Yes,
What type of vehicle was that?
a Ford Edge.
So not a Lexus SUV, right? A Ford Edge, right? And this is apparently a motor vehicle or vehicular homicide. And the one eyewitness that you should have interviewed pretty much immediately, you didn't until a year and a half, or to quote Colin Albert, a year and some change after the fact. But also can place a vehicle in front of the Albert residence that wasn't there prior to him doing his sweep. Okay, cool. Well, who does that Ford Edge belong to? the world may never know.
What direction was that vehicle parked when you saw it?
It was parked nose going up Fairview.
Toward Chapman?
Yes,
So you're coming up from behind it?
correct.
You see the rear of that vehicle?
Yes,
And was it parked adjacent to the Albert property, or was it across the street from the Albert property?
adjacent to the Albert family.
And how close to the area of the flagpole was that Ford Edge parked at 3:30 in the morning?
I can't give you an exact measurement, but looking at the front door, it was about 3 feet to the left of the front door in the area of the flagpole, so in between the front door and the flagpole.
Now, what caused you to remember that there was a Ford Edge parked at 3:30 outside the Albert's residence that night?
For as long as I can remember, they have never parked a vehicle in front of their house. They've always had enough ample parking in the driveway.
Because they have a big, fat driveway, which again is interesting and why it frustrates me so much as to why the viewing was at the very beginning of the trial, which makes no sense because pretty much no evidence of anything came in at that point, right? We had just jittery Timothy Nuttall. I think what would be especially helpful is if during closing, the defense uses as many visuals as possible to remind the jurors what the Albert residence actually looked like, what the size of the driveway looked like, right? To re-corroborate a lot of what came out in this testimony. It's like, well, there would be no need for this Ford Edge to be parked in the street, especially during a blizzard, because one, you know you're not supposed to park in the street during a blizzard because you know that there's going to be snow plows going up and down the road unless you want your car to get buried in there. So what would be the point of parking your car there, especially when you have a history of not parking any vehicles in front of your house? And he would know, not only because he knows the Alberts, and he delivered many pizzas from D&E Slop Shop, but also because he's worked for the DPW for, I think, 20 years or over 20 years? Likely had, I would assume, the same or a similar route. So he would know.
What policies or protocols of the DPW are in force when vehicles are parked on the street or the road during a snow emergency?
There is no parking allowed. We are supposed to notify our supervisor when there is a vehicle in the way. At that point, the supervisor will make attempt to call the resident or have the police show up at the resident. And then if they can't get the car removed, the car gets towed.
Sir, did you
And who wants that? I'm telling you, definitely not the Alberts.
follow protocol that night?
I did not.
Why not?
Knowing the Albert family, knowing that there was a first responder, I gave them respect and opted not to follow procedures.
How did the presence of that
So another thing to call out as well, too, that a lot of people brought up, and I missed the first go around listening to this testimony, is he refers to Brian Albert, the homeowner, as a first responder, which we people on the interwebs know about if you've been following this case. Police officer who's a first responder didn't think to come out when Karen Reed is shrieking her head off when she found John O'Keefe and Kerry Roberts hysterically flailing about as well, too. You would think a first responder, or even Jen McKay being like, hey, let me get my brother-in-law who's a cop and would know what to do in this kind of situation. He could probably get his boys over here a lot faster, too. Maybe drag John O'Keefe inside of the house because he's freezing to death. And being in the snow is probably not the best place to be at that moment in time. So this was really interesting. And the special probiotic didn't make it a point to highlight this. I feel like a lot of jurors may not have caught on to this, unlike many of us who have instant replay access. The jurors don't. So if they missed it, they might not have picked up on it, but then the special probiotic during cross-examination makes it a point to ask him why he refers to Brian Albert as a first responder. Now you're just highlighting that, bro, so you're not really doing yourself any kind of favors. We're going to get to cross-examination in just a minute, but I want to finish this up first because, again, for somebody who should have a dog in the fight, he doesn't seem to give a duck. Right? He was just trying to do his buddies a solid and say, no, I'm not trying to bust your balls here by calling it in. I'll just be extra careful when I'm plowing around. But if only he had called it in, there would be some physical record of that outside of Lucky's testimony.
Ford Edge parked on the side of the road affect your direction of travel?
I had to go around the vehicle.
How did you maneuver around it?
I had to maneuver to the left, go up, and then maneuver back right into my lane, and then continue up Fairview.
And at any point when you were maneuvering to the left and then angling back to the right, could you see part of the front lawn of the Alberts?
Yes.
Were you able to see any part of the area around the flagpole?
Yes, as I maneuvered back right.
And when you maneuvered back right and saw that area, what, if anything, did you see on the ground in the area of the flagpole?
I saw nothing.
He has passed their front yard thrice, and not once did he see anything. Anything on that front yard. Perhaps John O'Keefe's body just decided to reveal itself a little bit later, like a chia pet. So like we went over earlier, Lucky Loughran was not interviewed by Chip, Proctor, or Urine Buquackie until August of 2023. However, he was interviewed by Karen Reed's private investigator just 2 weeks after January 29th, 2022. So probably the best time to interview somebody because that's when your memory is likely the freshest. This is from TB Daily News, an article that Turtle Boy published back in September of 2023. Ironically, a couple of days after Ricky D'Antano was interviewed by the MSP as well. That's what the timeline tells me, right? So yeah, August 10th. This is from the transcript from their interview. This is the only known recorded interview the MSP conducted. There's no body cam, there's no audio, there's no nothing. Lucky Loughran, right? The witness they have the most to be afraid of, they seem to record. So I'm not going to go through this article or this transcript. I will link it in my description box below so you can give it a read. So this is 3 months after the FBI interviewed Lucky Loughran.
When you spoke to law enforcement, not the Canton police or the state police, you understood it was important to be as accurate as possible?
Yes.
And you understood, at least with that law enforcement agency, if you misled them in any way, it could be up to a 10-year penalty?
Yeah.
When you spoke to them, did you take that interview very seriously?
Yes.
Try to be as precise and accurate as you could?
Yes.
And when you spoke to them, obviously, like anybody, you had in mind that there could be serious consequences if they felt misled.
Yes.
You try to be honest with them,
Yes.
provide them your best memory in good faith.
Yes.
And this was shortly before, well, actually, this was May 24th, 2023, correct?
Correct.
Boom. I hope the jurors were writing all of these dates down because that is 3 months before Chip and Buquackie interviewed him. Now you know your case is going well when you have to start your cross-examination by asking one of the most important witnesses in this case whether or not he felt intimidated by the blogger Turtle Boy.
During the pendency from that night until today, it's fair to say there are many times where you have been intimidated, isn't it?
No.
You've been threatened.
Nope.
You were aware, sir, that you were being threatened by an online blogger to expose you.
I was not.
You're saying as you sit here today, you have no awareness in the history of this case that you were being threatened by an online blogger.
I was not threatened by an online blogger.
Was the online blogger threatening or saying that he would expose you and tell personal things about you if you weren't helpful?
He was not threatening.
Let's remove the word threatening. Was the person communicating and making clear to you that if you didn't testify in a certain way, there would be some consequence to you?
Objection. Can we have a time frame, please?
Any time from when you first spoke to the private investigator until today, were there communications made to you by an online blogger that there would be consequence to you if you didn't testify in a way that was acceptable to them?
No.
No. Nope, to quote Albert. And the special probiotic doesn't seem to understand what the word no is. And this is pretty ironic considering Kelly Beaver's testimony earlier in the week when she stated that she had a private fireside chat with one Boston Police Commissioner as a Boston PD rookie, encouraging her to do the right thing. So this is the ridiculous line of questioning that Lucky seems to not be too stirred up or troubled by. What also doesn't seem to make any sense to me is you're asking someone who is consistently denying that he felt threatened or was threatened, and then asking if he was aware of being threatened. How can you feel threatened if you aren't aware you're being threatened at all? In another piss-poor attempt to salvage his case, the special probiotic also tries to victimize Courtney Proctor, the sister of Chip Proctor.
Did you then meet the investigator later on at a school?
Yes, I did.
And who did you meet at the school?
I met Paul again.
And what was the purpose of that?
He wanted to go through my route.
You want to go through your route.
Correct.
And then, did you choose to meet at the school?
I did.
You did?
I did.
And why did you choose the school?
It was an easier landmark for the gentleman to get to, and it was minutes from my route.
Why didn't you suggest going to Denny's and get that Grand Slam? I heard they got a 2-for-1 deal. So as you just heard Lucky say, I suggested me and Karen Reed's private investigator meet at the school that just so happens to be the place of employment for Chip Proctor's sister, which we're about to learn. Why? Because it's minutes from the route that I am going to be taking you through so you can do your job as an investigator. It's a public place. It's a parking lot. Nothing nefarious going on over here.
Did you know that former Trooper Proctor's sister worked there?
I had no idea.
You said last year that when you went by...
And then it never comes up again. Who cares? If this is your attempt to get in the harassment and intimidation stuff into play, because as we know, Chip Proctor and I think Courtney Proctor have also cried harassment against Turtle Boy and the witness intimidation charges he's currently facing. So, I don't know, is this supposed to elicit some sort of sympathy for this guy who they haven't even met but have only heard bad things about? I don't think it's really hitting home in the way that you think, unless you called Chip, but you didn't. So I don't really understand the strategy here, but notice how none of these questions have anything to do with his testimony on direct examination about what he saw that night, what he heard, his route, how that might have been affected by the conditions of the weather. Oh, aside from the dumpster.
Were you looking at their front line?
Yes.
Did you see if their lights were on?
Again, I didn't recognize if their lights were on.
Do you look at every neighbor's front lawn up to the door as you're driving in the snow plowing?
I look to the right and to the left, and my eyes will graze to the yard. Yes, I will look there.
You were saying you have a specific memory of looking at the Albert front yard all the way to the door. Do you have a specific memory of looking at the other neighbors' yards to their door?
I don't think it's too far of a reach to assume that, yeah, he might have paid a little extra close attention to a home he recognized because he has a connection to this family.
Can you repeat that, please? I'm sorry.
Yes, you said that you looked at the Albert house all the way to the door.
Correct.
Do you have a memory of looking at any other houses all the way to the door?
Yes.
Okay. Which house had a dumpster in front of it?
I don't know. I wasn't paying attention to a dumpster. Dumpster wouldn't be in the front yard.
Are you sure on your route there was no dumpsters in anybody's front yard?
I can tell you there was a dumpster this week.
I love that. And not for nothing, Hanklin, but I think a body, in seeing a body, would be more recognizable and stand out in your brain than a dumpster. So there you have it, folks. That concludes the testimony of Lucky Loughran. So, with that being said, if you enjoyed today's content, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make sure you hit that notification bell so you do not miss the next Karen Reed recap from me. And make sure you hit that like button because that tells the YouTube algorithm that this is newsworthy news. And it is. It is because, I mean, it goes without saying. This is all nefarious ridiculousness. Then all the other words is God save the Commonwealth and
God forbid animals.